doing fine. Glad we could talk.
Yeah, it's good. It's good connection here. I was just making comment that Missouri is smack dab right in the middle of what promises to be a historical event on August 21st of this year.
You guys are so lucky. You're going to see a total solar eclipse in much of the state. It'll be the first one in Missouri and also in Illinois since 1869.
And I made the comment that the next time one of these comes around, all of us are going to be dead because it takes. I mean, it's just that. I mean, it's macabre, but it's so unusual to have something like this happen.
Actually, I hope that's not true because you guys are really, really lucky. Another one is coming through 7 years from now. That'll cross the southeastern part of the state as well as southern Illinois. That's really unusual because any given point on Earth, on average, sees a total solar eclipse just once every 400 years, but you guys are really lucky.
Now, you were up at Queenie Park this weekend, right?
Yes, there was a day-long Eclipse Expo because this really is a huge deal, and I want people to pay attention because most of your listeners have probably at some point seen a partial solar eclipse. So a solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes in front of at least part of the sun. And, of course, you can't look at the sun safely if any part of it is visible. But if you look at it with special glasses or if you use a pinhole projector, you'll see the sun turn into a crescent. A total solar eclipse is a fundamentally different experience. When the moon completely blocks the surface of the sun, it goes dark in the middle of the day, not like midnight, but like twilight. Bright stars and planets come out. And during a total eclipse, for all of maybe 2.5 minutes, it's actually safe to look at the sun with the naked eye. And it's the most awe-inspiring spectacle in nature. Everyone should see it.
From a scientific viewpoint, scientists who collect data on the sun and what transpires there, this has to be a time period of great interest for them to be able to focus on the sun in that fashion.
Well, it is, but actually, there will be scientists doing work, but actually, 100, 150 years ago, total solar eclipses were really important to science, and that's actually the subject of my new book, American Eclipse, which tells the story of a total solar eclipse that crossed America's Wild West in 1878. And at that time, astronomers took advantage of every total solar eclipse, which, again, are very rare, but they would head out to wherever it was visible, in this case, out in the Wild West, set up their telescopes, and then for literally just 3 minutes during the total eclipse, conduct their studies. And that eclipse in 1878, Thomas Edison, right after he invented the phonograph, he went to Wyoming to study the solar eclipse. And so he's one of the characters in my book, American Eclipse.
How much of a safety issue is this? Because you mentioned it's a very small window of time, just a couple of minutes, that you can actually safely look at the sun because it's going to be obscured by the moon. But prior to that and after that, you have to be very, very careful because you can cause damage to your eyes, can't you?
That's exactly right, and that's a very good point. And so let me stress another thing, which is the zone where the total eclipse will be visible is only about 70 miles wide. Not all of Missouri and not all of Illinois will see the total eclipse. In fact, the only part of the St. Louis metropolitan area is in the zone of total eclipse. The southwestern part of the metropolitan area will see the total eclipse, places like Kirkwood and Chesterfield. The northeastern part, St. Charles and Ferguson, will never see a total eclipse, only a partial eclipse. So if you're in the zone where there is no total eclipse, it'll never be safe to look at the sun with the naked eye. You should try to get some eclipse glasses. They're not very expensive, $1 or $2. You might even find them for free around here. But they've got really, really dark lenses, much darker than sunglasses, that enable you to look at the sun safely. And if you don't have them, you could just punch a little hole in a piece of cardboard. Don't look through the hole, but have the sun project through the hole onto, say, the ground, and instead of a little circle of light, you'll see a crescent during the partial eclipse. But during the total eclipse, if you're in the zone, and only for those 2.5 minutes, then it is safe to look with the naked eye.
Makes me wonder how many kids are going to be out of school that day.
Well, it's a Monday, and I gather that schools, I'm from Colorado, I gather that schools around here will be in session. Honestly, if I had my kids in school and they were in the zone outside of the path of the total eclipse, I would take the day off, I would take my kids out of school, and I would head down to where it's total, because it's just an awe-inspiring experience. I go around the world to see these things. I've seen 5 total solar eclipses in places like Indonesia and Australia. because they're that remarkable.
You're really hung up on this, aren't you?
Oh, no, seriously. This is something you really don't want to miss. And again, you're going to have another opportunity around here in 7 years in 2024. So you can see two of them. And in terms of the eclipse on August 21st of this year, I have some basic details about it on my website, which is American-eclipse.com, which is about my book, but also I have a page about the August 21st eclipse with links to NASA and other places that have very detailed maps that you can see precisely where you need to be in order to see the total eclipse. And I really would encourage everyone to make it a point to go see it.
What got you interested in doing this sort of thing?
Well, I saw my first total solar eclipse in Aruba in 1998, and I'm a science writer. I used to work for National Public Radio. I was a science correspondent, and I went to Aruba to see this total eclipse with my science hat on. But it was really, I dare say, a spiritual experience. I mean, I was standing on this beach watching the partial eclipse go by, and then suddenly when it became a total eclipse, it goes dark. And at that point, I took off my eclipse glasses because, again, that's the only time it's safe. And I felt like I had been transported to some other planet. I was looking at this sky I'd never seen before. And the great paradox is that it's only during a total solar eclipse, only when the surface of the sun is completely hidden, that you actually can see the sun, because that's the only time it's safe to look with the naked eye. And while the bright surface is covered, you can see what's around the sun. And what's around the sun is the solar corona. It's the sun's outer atmosphere, which looks like a wreath that's been woven with tinsel or kind of silk. It's like it has hair on it, and it just shimmers out in space. And you can see that with the planets. So you're basically looking toward the center of the solar system. You can see the sun and the planets together. It's a really, it's like a psychedelic experience. And in fact, it can be addictive. And I'm addicted. I admit that.
David Barron is the author of American Eclipse, a nation's epic race to catch the shadow of the moon and win the glory of the world. I've often read that during these eclipses, when they transpire and you're in the direct path, that the temperature will drop and that animals will start, preparing themselves to go to sleep for the night. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the temperature drop is noticeable. It's not dramatic. It might drop about 10 degrees. But absolutely, animals think it's a weird dusk that's come on all of a sudden. So birds will fly around confused. You'll see fireflies. You might see bats come out. Frogs will start croaking. Chickens will head home to roost because it basically is dusk, but it happens all of a sudden, and then it only lasts a few minutes.
I want to talk about Maria Mitchell for just a second. She was an astronomer with Vassar, is that right? And what part does she play in this and science in general?
Well, I'm glad you brought her up. So I mentioned that Thomas Edison went west for the eclipse in 1878, and Mitchell, who actually pronounced her name Mariah, so Mariah Mitchell, spelled Maria, she was by far the best-known female scientist in America back in the 19th century. She taught astronomy at Vassar College, the women's college. But this, as you might imagine, was a time when it was not easy to be a female scientist. There were very few jobs, and in fact, the public in general thought women couldn't do science and shouldn't do science. Well, Mariah Mitchell, in 1878, while groups of men were preparing these elaborate eclipse expeditions out to the Wild West, she took it upon herself to assemble an all-female expedition to Denver, Colorado. And, she got a lot of press for it and was really praised as showing that women could be educated and smart and strong, and she helped open the doors of science to women.
So where will you be on the 21st? And I think I have a pretty good guess, but go ahead anyway.
Well, I've been planning for August 21st, 2017 for 19 years because ever since I saw my first total eclipse in Aruba, I've been waiting. This is because I need to say this is the first total eclipse in the continental United States in 38 years and the first to cross the nation coast to coast in 99 years. So I've been planning for this. I live in Colorado. I will be in Jackson, Wyoming, up in the Tetons, which is right smack dab in the path where the moon's shadow will fall, and that's where you'll see the total eclipse. And I've got family members coming in from all over the country. We made our hotel reservations 3 years ago.
Good grief. That's, I mean, actually, when you think about it, it does make sense because, like that stretch of Missouri, I guess it'll go from northwest to southeast, going across the Show Me State. But I would suspect that a lot of hotels in small communities have been booked for quite some time by people. What is it? Umbrophile? Is that the proper word?
Right, umbrophiles.
Yeah.
Lovers of the shadow. Yes, eclipse chasers. And I can tell you from having been at the Eclipse Expo in St. Louis on Saturday and just talking to folks around the area, I mean, within the path, again, the 70-mile wide path where it will be a total eclipse in Missouri and in southern Illinois, for the most part, there is no lodging left. And but there will be millions of people on that day who will drive into the path where it's total. And I would encourage people to do that, but give yourself lots of time. There's going to be epic traffic on that day.
Good grief. Well, it's an exciting moment in time, that's for sure. I think I'd rather be in the Grand Tetons with you, with temperature-wise. It'll probably be much more pleasant.
Well, come along.
Here's the worst possible case scenario. It's overcast.
And that will be a disappointment, but it still will be exciting. So imagine, again, all of Missouri will see at least a partial eclipse. Mm-hmm. And even in places like the northeastern part of the St. Louis metro area, it's going to get really weird as the deep partial eclipse sets in. It'll be even weirder, of course, in where it's total. But I've been lucky in my 5 total eclipses that I've gone to. I've seen them all, not all of them as well as I might like, but I've never been completely clouded out. But people I've talked to who've been under a completely overcast sky say it's still really eerie because it goes from being a gray day to being dark. Like all of a sudden it's night in the middle of the day. So you'll be disappointed by what you don't get to see, but it's still going to be a very exciting day and something worth experiencing. And again, you'll have a chance in this part of the country in 7 more years to hope for clear skies.
It's nice to talk to somebody who's so enthusiastic about a scientific event, and I thank you for your time today.
My pleasure, Doug.
David Barron, former public radio journalist and also the author of the new book, American Eclipse, A Nation's Epic Race to Catch the Shadow of the Moon and Win the Glory of the World. Again, the eclipse is coming up on August 21st, and you'll be able to see it on